Namaste. Hello and welcome to the Kundalini podcast. That was Zen. This is Tao. I'm Vivek Govekar. This is episode 68. And a wonderful topic came to me when I was answering some of the questions that were put in comments. This happens regularly, so keep up with the comments and your ideas, suggestions. Someone asked me about two different things. One is science. And I get questions from people who are obviously, if you're interested in the metaphysical, if you're exploring things that are unknown, you come across a lot of stuff that people are questioning at their stage of understanding, knowledge, development. They question those things, and some may be laughable to us, and but I still have to answer it seriously. Like, okay, if you're looking at me as an authority, and I cannot say, oh, well, this is just, come on, you should know better than this. So one of the questions I get asked sometimes and makes me laugh is the earth flat? We have come to the point where people can be made to believe that. And here's why it's dangerous. These are the people who are living with technology. Obviously, if you watch my videos on YouTube and if you have a smartphone, you're living with technology. None of the technology that you're using right now would have been possible without satellites. And these satellites go around the globe, which is the earth. So you're typing on a smartphone on YouTube asking me if the earth is flat. And the irony is that every one of your tools that you're using disproves that notion. So no, the earth is not flat. At least I don't believe in it. If you want to believe that and keep proving that, good luck. The other thing he asked me was about science. Now that is a more important question and relevant to this conversation. What is science? And is science just another religion? Now, when that question got asked, it made me perk up and listen and start thinking on those lines, because I was a scientist. I still am a scientific person. And I love science and I enjoy science. So my answer to that person was, no, science is just fact. Because you set up an experiment, you either prove it right or prove it wrong. You don't have any attachment to the outcome. Oh, I hope this turns out right. No, you don't keep that bias in there. If it disproves that, you say, hey, this is the part that was disproven. So now there are other aspects. Let's set up more experiments and find out. That's it. And it builds up the case. The case gets stronger. And it's settled only when there's enough evidence that beyond that, there is no contradictory evidence being presented. That's it. Now, how does that tie into a Kundalini awakening? There is a wonderful statement by Sherlock Holmes. I know it's a fictional character, but so Arthur Conan Doyle wrote it. He says, when all evidence that is presented to you has been eliminated, and the only piece of evidence that checks out, that makes sense, however improbable, that must be the truth. And you have to investigate it in that direction. And that's the case with my Kundalini awakening. You can take science and do whatever with it that you want. The mistake is to believe that science has found every solution and that only the scientific method has the right answers. And nothing can be found outside of that. That would be a big mistake. That would be a closed-minded approach by scientists themselves. That now they're so cocooned in their own way of thinking that they cannot go past certain things. Let me put it in another way, because when I first awakened, it was like, if this is superstition, that is science, how are these two? They are contradictory. The mistaken assumption was that these are contradictory. Okay, you have science and you have superstition, and they oppose each other. But what a Kundalini awakening shows you is what Aldous Huxley calls supra-rational. Now, this is a very rational human being, Aldous Huxley. But he had his mescaline experience, and he wrote this wonderful book that I mention in my links sometimes. It's called The Perennial Philosophy. And he got the experience, and then he still came back to being a rational human being. That never went away. He found supra-rationality. Meaning, your limited mind and what it is showing you in your unawakened state, and the opposite of that, that you call irrational, what you think is logical and rational, are still constructs within that framework, that mind, that conditioned, programmed way of thinking. You haven't gone behind the curtain, so to speak. Let's say there is a stage and there's a performance going on. And you can say all of these things, oh, science, this is based on my intellect, and love is based on my heart, etc., etc. And these are all notions that are fixed, like, okay, I'm a normal, rational human being, and this is what I know to be true. All that goes away. Because then you realize that, well, there is a power, energy that flows through you. That is the higher power which was set up that way. This is the mechanism that was set up in a certain way. Up to a certain level, you are only supposed to see the world a certain way. And in that, all of this stuff, science, etc., has value. Now, even post-awakening, I tell people, whatever physics tells you, whatever biology tells you, medicine tells you, that is proven, tried and tested scientific methods that have been used for many, many years, maybe centuries, do not go and start questioning them just because you had a spiritual experience or go against science. You'd be making a big mistake. Or if you want to do that, stop using your cell phone because you don't believe in science. And that gadget only works on science. Don't disprove yourself by using something and then say, oh, well, I don't believe in all of this. You don't have to believe. This works. The phone works. The part which requires belief or faith is religion. And that opens itself up to all kinds of interpretations, all kinds of manipulations. And that's where the problem lies. So it's a blessing to have an awakening as a scientist, when you are a scientist and think on those terms. I've been asked about celibacy and sex, and people who are interested in that can go watch that video. Let's talk about sex. I've made that. You don't have to be celibate, but it's preserving your seminal fluid that is important. You actually become more charismatic, more attractive to people, because the awakening obviously puts you on a higher level. And what is attraction? What is impressing someone? It is the act of showing them something that makes them go, wow, that they haven't seen before. And this is all about wow. There is nothing non-wow in the Kundalini process. So, as you awaken to higher realities, as you awaken to a greater depth of understanding of the world, naturally you investigate everything, including science. So I not only don't have a problem with science, this can be incorporated in science and explored further. That this is the right time right now. The people that are awakening now, I had another conversation with somebody who awakened and was also a scientist and had trouble believing in it. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Apply the scientific method as this is happening to you. Make a notebook, like your lab journal. Write stuff down, Treat it like an experiment. Treat it based on what observations you're making, what results you're getting, and outcome-based. Make it outcome-based and explore it that way instead of just not agreeing with it, finding some other methods which may or may not work, make this thing worse, but you are saying, no, this is not true, while it is happening to you. Why do that? The best way to approach this, and this is how I did it, is what can I gain from this? And what can I lose from myself? This is the first time that happens. You are always thinking, what can I gain from something? But this time you're like, what can I lose from my old personality, from my own old self, so-called self that I thought was such a fixed notion of how the world worked? That needs to go away, and what parts need to go away. And mindfulness helps you see that, oh, even if I said, let it go away and I have changed inside me, I'm still that same person who could be driven towards that, whatever it was that you're trying to get rid of. And then what pattern do I have to set up? How do I do it? Through affirmations. And this is the result that I'm explaining to you. Whatever I went through, stumbled through, and gained some knowledge and information, and mainly tried it out on myself, saw if it worked on the process, then it's the scientific method applied to a Kundalini awakening. And there is no difference. scientists perform experiments on other subjects, and they are objective themselves and they don't perform it on themselves. But what choice do I have if I have a Kundalini awakening? I'm doing it on myself. But fortunately, the awakening also gives you an increased amount of intelligence, or an increased access to the intelligence you already had. So that is also hidden from you. And part of this notion of I'm a rational human being, I know this, is a contraction. It's a covering, a barrier that keeps you away from those things. And only with an awakening, because the energy is doing it, leaves you no choice, can it be accessed? Can those barriers be bypassed or broken? And you are once and for all limitless, free of those shackles, and free to explore those things that are now being given to you. But other than that, yes, I believe in science, and I'm not at all unscientific. So those questions, if you want to ask me, the answers will be the same as what a physicist tells you. The Earth is a globe. It is not a flat circle. The personal experience of some things that physics states happens because of an awakening. For example, the concept of time in physics is that space-time is one thing. You cannot move in space without moving in time. And that time is flexible, it's variable. A clock that is sent on a plane that goes above the Earth's surface, and the same exact watch or clock set to the same exact time, exact replica of that clock that stays on Earth, loses time. Or time is flexible based on how the physics of the universe operates. You actually get to experience that in samadhi, because that expanded state of consciousness is available to you. Okay. Then you start exploring things like Kashmir Shaivism and things that have been done before, which kind of correlate these two things, bridge the gap between things like that. But at no point is this just mysticism and mumbo jumbo. In fact, some things that I thought were mysticism and mumbo jumbo, like astrology, started making sense on a much deeper level. And I understood why, well, the motions of the planets, why they matter, why they are important. And how can I add to the scientific knowledge of that and bring it to the 21st century, where, again, that has gone into the realm of hucksterism and misinterpretation and misleading people based on fear. How do we take that out of it? Okay, and explore it in a scientific way, or at least a rational way, where the only supposition that we have to change is like, oh, these things exist. And this is not just mysticism and mumbo jumbo people are talking about. How do we explore this in a systematic way? So that's a little bit about science, about my thoughts on that, and as it relates to the Kundalini process. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you for watching. Be well.